So welcome to the Red Review podcast. Hi, Jeremy.
Hi, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. And hello to all the Winning Business Virtual Experience viewers. This is our first ever live recorded podcast. So welcome. So just a quick introduction to the Red Review. The Red Review has been running for about a year and a half. We're a podcast exclusively for bids and proposals professionals. There's two of us who run it, me and Jeremy out of the UK, and we've got listeners across the world. And one of our favorite types of podcasts to do is when we get to interview really interesting people. And one of the most interesting people we interviewed in our first series was Dana, who joins us today. So welcome, Dana. You can find the podcast on any podcasting app that you use: Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple, Anchor. And we truly have listeners around the world. So US, UK and Australia are our biggest markets because I guess of the English-speaking podcast. But we have listeners weirdly across the road, including Nigeria, which I'm pretty sure is my father-in-law who lives in Nigeria. But we have like two listeners in Nigeria, which is probably him and his marketing manager. Anyway, Jez, we're going to talk to Dana today. So shall we get into it?
Yes. Welcome, Dana, again. Like Mike said, our one of our most listened to and interesting episodes. So thank you for joining us. Would you mind introducing yourself, Dana, for those that didn't catch the previous episode?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Dana Small. I've been working in pharmaceuticals for around almost 20 years, which is scary to say. A decade in procurement, and most of that supporting the sales and marketing function. I also have a blog, which for a business blog, it's hard to keep it entertaining, but I try. I'm not a big blog reader, so when I do put out content, I try to kind of make it a little sassy or have a little edge to it so people aren't bored, but still be useful, right? You don't want to give people crap quality, but you still want to give them something that they can take away, but still isn't a pain to read like a textbook.
And the blog is Ms. Category Management.
Yes.
And for bidding people, you should be reading Dana's blog because it's great insights into the kind of the world of supply chain management, category management, procurement, and all those kind of things that come into that world, and really kind of really interesting to see how the world is from the other side of the table. So Dana, we're going to have a chat today around kind of procurement trends for 2020 and what procurement really thinks. So we'll play the jingle and we'll get straight into it.
Okay.
So Dana, as we said, we're recording this live for APMP's Winning the Business Virtual Experience. So we thought we'd delve into some of the procurement and supply chain management trends that the bid teams across the world kind of need to know about. So let's start with some big trends and things you're seeing in the market then. What are the big kind of barriers or challenges that procurement are facing right now?
So it's interesting. I think when everything started, everybody kind of stopped and kind of put a pause to most things, right? And so if you took a look at what was going on, it was kind of like keep the lights on activities. People weren't really, ready to test the waters. They just wanted to make sure that they had, the basics to keep the business running. I feel like now people are a little bit more comfortable. And so what I'm seeing inside the business is that people are putting more thoughtful RFPs together, a little bit more time, a little bit more space. They know they're starting a little bit earlier. So, hey, we need this next year. We're going to start now in July to make sure we have enough time. And it's not the, hey, can we get this done in 2 months type of thing when I typically push back and say, no, we can't do that. But it's nice to see that they're being more thoughtful. And I think now they're at least a little bit more comfortable to start doing the things that aren't just keep the lights on, but maybe are stretching, a little bit farther. I think from the supplier side, we've had some interesting bids where people have gone literally belly up in the middle of a bid. Yeah, it was shocking. We emailed them. We got this crazy response back and we're like, what's going on? And you go to their website and it's like, hey, we shut down due to COVID. We just don't have the volume. So you're like, oh my gosh, what is going on? So I think for us internally, we really have to think about making sure financial due diligence is done on our side, right? Normally it was kind of the check the box thing going on, but now I think it's something where people really must take a real good look at these businesses to make sure they're set up for, the long haul and, all the things that are going on with COVID-19.
Yeah, we had a big scandal in the UK last year. Carillion, was it last year? So big UK supplier to government, outsourcing, facilities management, construction, went belly up overnight,
Wow.
and we're talking billions of pounds of public contracts that were put at risk. And so I've seen a lot of tightening of financial checks and viability checks, sustainability checks of suppliers from major clients, and I think it sounds like COVID-19 is going to be one of the things that tries that more. So I guess for bid teams, getting all your standard content, your accounts, making sure you got the correct counts, you understand all the different gearing ratios that procurement teams look for in terms of profitability and money in the bank and those types of things, and making sure that you understand them as part of your bid no bid is probably a big thing to look out for, right, Jez?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, in other worlds where I've been talking to big cheeses in corporate real estate for other reasons in my other business life, an interesting point that they made was around governance levels falling significantly, but temporarily, where the boards of quite big corporates have suddenly said to their staff, just get on with stuff, just make it happen. Some projects that they've had in the back of their minds for a few years but didn't really know how to get their staff to back it or engage in it, they're suddenly getting the green light for, because obviously the world's changed, the game's changed. Have you seen some of that as well, Dana? That organisations from a procurement perspective are ready to do things a bit differently, a bit more freely?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely changed everybody's perception on not only things like contracting, but bidding and going out and understanding your supply base and, who is 2-3 tiers back from you, and really having a good understanding of that. I think, honestly, it's a tough, situation, but you really have to take the time to understand, the depth of your suppliers and understand what's possible and what's not, right?
Yeah. So any other big trends you're seeing in procurement right now, or even that were coming before COVID-19 hit?
You know, I don't know.
The last time we spoke, we talked about a lot about category management and the growth of that, I guess. So do you want to kind of summarize category management for those who are not even aware of it at all?
Sure. So category management, you can think of procurement in a couple of different ways. And I like to build up. Like, procurement is the actual purchasing, right? You're actually buying something. Here's the PO, here's the invoice, let's go. Then you have strategic sourcing, which is, right, the 7-step process everybody goes through, finding the right suppliers, vetting. And then category management is really taking a look at what you're buying and can you buy it, maybe with other things, and having this broader strategy when it comes to purchasing. It's not just like, hey, I need a typewriter, or hey, I need, a phone. Well, we might need 1,000 phones. So let's think about how to do that strategically and make sure we get good cost savings along the way. To say what's really changed, not a whole lot from what we've done. I still think there's a huge gap in some people's training and learning and what category management is. Even in internal teams, I've seen people just not understand simple things like, what is a BOTNA, right? What's your best alternative? I had one person who really thought it was just another term, and it just wasn't. They just didn't understand. You really need to have a secondary supplier, a secondary backup plan to what happens if this contract just doesn't go through. What if it doesn't go through legal, right? And I've had those experiences, so having that alternative is useful. But I think having that training and category management and people really understanding how to do it and do it right is still pretty much lacking. I don't know about any other key trends. I mean, for the most part, I'm doing advertising and marketing. So looking in that space, it's who's going to make it and who's not, who's going to get acquired by, some of the big boys. I'm just kind of waiting and chomping at the bit. It's one of those categories where I think there's a lot of churn anyways and a lot of buying up. So is COVID going to kind of increase this, or is it going to be a big enough hit that maybe even some of the big boys like Omnicom or WPP have to scale back and see, what really makes sense. But it's going to be an interesting time, because at first, you would think, oh, we're still going to do advertising, and you still got TV and commercials, but in the same time, we're seeing huge hits to people like Amazon and, Google and Facebook, where people are just pulling back and not spending, right? So it's one of those things where I don't know where it's going to go, but it'll be interesting to see the overall industry and see what happens.
That's one of the big benefits of category management, is you're staying close to that category by changing how you operate, as opposed to just waiting until a contract needs to be renewed, doing the usual strategic sourcing piece, a few months out. Staying close to it, because of course the game will change. As you said, you've got people pulling away from particularly Facebook in terms of advertising. Yep. But in the way that we live our lives, more people working from home, well after the pandemic, this will go on for a couple of years at least, and it's going to change the way we live and work. So that will change the way that we consume content, and therefore the advertising in the gaps or whatever that wraparound looks like. So you're going to have to stay close to it to see what's the best outcome, won't you?
I find that whole category really interesting, because so there's a big client that Mace works for, where I have a chat every now and again with the supply chain manager, they call it. They call it category management, the same premise. She knows more about Mace than I know, because she's like monitoring all the news feeds of what we're winning, where we're at, how the business is doing. I'm like, bloody hell. She's like, oh, I saw you won this the other day. How's that going to affect your capacity for the opportunity we've got coming up in this city? And I'm like, wow, that's not even out in the public domain yet. So I think really good kind of category management, or that kind of understanding of your category, is a real game changer. I just picking up on something you said there, though, that rather than doing a spot buy for one item, you're thinking about how can you buy 1,000 telephones at once. Of course, therefore, I guess you're dealing with more internal stakeholders and trying to find a solution that meets kind of multiple requirements, as opposed to buying bespoke every single time. And there was a research paper that the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply did at the beginning of the year that talked about what are the kind of the key skills chief procurement officers are looking for at the moment. And they talked about kind of things like influencing and negotiating and leadership skills as kind of those key skills they're looking for now, because they know they want their category management, supply chain and procurement management teams to be a lot more kind of able to manage internally and, push back, as you said, on stakeholders, rather than just being the machine that someone goes, I want to buy something, and they go, yep, and just pump out. They're just the machine that pumps out the RFPs, right? So I guess for bidders, and a big buzzword in bidding world is capture at the moment. In that capture process, before the bid comes out, we need to understand more about how those internal mechanisms are working behind the scenes before these procurements come to market.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, when you think about category management and trying to do it effectively, if you're not the person breaking down those silos, right, internally, then what are you really doing, right? I mean, you have to understand, you have to take a look at the organization as a whole, and that's the value you provide. And I think a lot of people who think, oh, we're just spot buying and we're just procurement, just purchasing things, they're missing kind of the bigger picture. And I think even internally, you get a lot of people who are missing the bigger picture of, hey, if I know you're spending 2 million here, but if we're spending 20 million here, don't you want to achieve those right economies of scale and, have the organization benefit as a whole by combining these things? But I think, to your point, we do need to be negotiators. We do need to be able to have, internally be able to get everybody together and aligned. But at the same time, there's a lot of people who think, oh, I could do that job. I don't need your help, right? I feel like it's the one job where people are like, oh, I can do your job. I don't need any training, right? I can negotiate. I can do this fine. But as it turns out, it probably isn't one of those jobs, and they don't have the insight and visibility into the organization like we do. And so it's a little bit tougher, I think, for people really to get their arms around what we do and why it's different. It's like you wouldn't tell an accountant like how to go do their taxes, right? But a lot of people want to tell us how to do purchasing, which doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Same thing with bidding. Everyone's an expert in bidding, particularly
Exactly.
senior leaders of businesses, because they've been through bidding. And actually, genuinely, most senior leaders are very good at pitching and bidding. but it's not necessarily seen as a profession in its own right.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the drives of the APMP and businesses like Jeremy's, is to try and make sure we push that professionalization of the, is that a word? Professionalization of the industry.
Yeah.
That actually is a
that.
genuine skill and capability that people kind of people need.
And it is a skill, right? I mean, it's something that you have to learn. It's not something that it's innate. And I think I did a blog where I said, hey, I hired a cat to walk my dog. Like, yes, everybody knows how to walk, but does that necessarily mean they know how to do it right? And there's a lot to it.
I guess the question we didn't put in the notes actually, but it's probably the title of the session really, is what makes a good supplier for you as a category management person, almost as opposed to just a procurement person? What are you looking for from your suppliers in how they engage and work with you? What does good look like, I guess, from the supplier?
So for me, it's typically somebody who has good communication and wants to keep up and wants to be a partner. And I know it's kind of cliche, but people who truly form a partnership with the business and are truly invested in seeing us succeed, there's a huge difference. I mean, even within advertising agencies, the ones that you can tell are heartfelt and want to see succeed, you can see the effort that they put in and their goals are aligned to what ours are, versus somebody who's just going, oh, I'm just a regular supplier, they could kill me at any time. They're just not putting forth, I guess, that effort and communication to keep lines open. And if there's small little issues, they're going to let me know about it so that we can course correct a lot quicker, right? Than it would be like, hey, this is the Titanic. It's a little bit too late. We're going to hit the iceberg, versus, hey, we can see it off in the distance. Let's go ahead and start shifting now. So I think it's that communication and just openness and honesty, to me, is what really can set, I think, suppliers apart when they go to, try to form those partnerships.
There was a study by a firm in our industry called Strategic Proposals, and they do a study kind of every 10 years or so on kind of the views of procurement. And one stat was in 2007, around 30% of buyers were kind of fed up with receiving consistently mediocre bids. 10 years later, or 11 years later, 2018, it was 47%. So in other words, nearly half the people they interviewed were just fed up of receiving mediocre bids where they just kind of pumped it in. They didn't have there was no passion to it, no interest to it. And funnily enough, those are the bids that didn't win.
Yeah, and typically it's people who are already partners with us, right? Where you see a lot of times in the advertising agency that they think they've already got the business won, right? And they come in and you're like, no, really, this is a formal process for a reason. You guys just don't have it because there's 4 other internal providers doing the same thing. And so a lot of times you get people who are new and hungry and chomping at the bit to get in that'll just blow the competition away, right? And for the most part, I don't know if it's procurement's fault of the way we write the RFPs, but a lot of times you just see these people just least amount of effort to try to, get it done, return it. And sometimes they don't even make sense. And so it makes you think, like, how can we write something that's a little bit easier for people to respond? It's not as time consuming, right? So the ROI is still there, but yet we can get the answers we need as a business to really make the right decisions.
Yeah.
And we've just recorded an episode actually on capture from our side of the fence, and there was some discussion in that. I can't remember whether it will go out before or after this one, but the people will be able to pick it up. But there's a bit of discussion in that about co-creation and how we on our side of the fence need to work with you guys, particularly more professionalized category management functions, to try and work the solution with you that comes up with more value for you as a client that we get to take a share of. Because that's utopia, is that you get paid by taking a share of the value you create for the client. And so do you see people doing that or beginning to do that, coming to you way before you even think you have a need? You're coming with a proactive proposal, or should they?
They should. And I think a lot of times when I hear back from, we just had a SRM review, and it's like, we want you guys to be proactive. Tell us what we're missing in our business. Tell us where we're screwing up, right? We're not perfect. We need your insight and help. And I think, the premise to category management really is innovation and having that partnership so that we can make you better and in turn you make us better, right? It's a two-way street. But yeah, 100 times all the time during, meetings and QBRs, it's like be more proactive, and it's like that buzzword you just hear every single time you go through a review. And I think sometimes the suppliers know the business better than we do, and so it's useful for them to say, hey, I'm seeing X, Y, and Z, what do you think about this? I just don't think a lot of people feel empowered enough that they can do it as a supplier, but I think if they were to do it, it'd be such a huge benefit to the business, and that's what they're really looking for a lot of the times.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most hardest things for, I guess, people on our side of the fence to do is that co-creation piece where they don't then just go into sales mode, right? And they start pitching a solution before they've really listened to the business and workshopped it through. But there are some really good organizations out there who definitely stand out that have got a methodology and a process for working with a client, work through their problem, help them understand the opportunities in the market, and ultimately drive them to a tender or an opportunity or even a direct appointment whereby the solution actually delivers best value for the client and it saves the client a load of time in procurement as well. One final question, and then we'll move you on to heaven and hell, which I know you faced before. So we've got a slightly different one for you today.
Okay.
We're seeing a lot of contract extensions. So I don't know if that's the same in the pharma world, but particularly in the UK, and I work in the property and construction industry, a lot of contract extensions or delayed procurements where clients are reevaluating what they're doing, perhaps looking for more cashable savings up front. So do they need to buy a long-term contract, or they just want to get low price for the next couple of years and then go out for re-procurement of something more significant? But Jeremy and I believe there's going to be a big wave of opportunities through the back end of this year, really. And the Boris boom, as we'd call it, so Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of the UK, is rumoured to be pushing to do a big spend on public infrastructure and public services, which in turn will drive a lot of spend out into the UK market, which is quite reliant on the public sector, probably a lot more maybe than the States is in some respects with healthcare and other things. So are you seeing a similar sort of trend? Are you thinking you're going to be busier back end of the year?
Yeah, 100%. And I think at least they're, like I said before, it's kind of more thoughtful. They're coming to me now. They're having extended timelines. They're not trying to cram, 3 or 4 month RFP into maybe a month, right? Where they just like, we got to do this quick. The business is running so fast. It's a lot more thoughtful approach than I think I've ever seen in the past with my business partners. And I think it's kind of refreshing and nice to see that people are taking the time because one of my big things was always garbage in, garbage out. You guys, you want this turnaround 2 weeks. Guess what you're getting back in 2 weeks? You're not giving people enough time to think through it and then say, okay, you need X, Y, and Z. Because you need X, Y, and Z, you should do A, B, and C, right? It's just that thoughtfulness now. I feel like people are actually taking the time to stop, breathe, pause, think about it, and then say, okay, let's really do this the right way and take our time in doing so. But yeah, I definitely see a lot of people towards the end of this year where I think, everybody kind of hit pause early on. Now it's just ramping up. So even in my industry, I think, people probably extended contracts and they're going to take the time and step back and say, okay, what's our best long-term solution? So yeah, 100% agree and see the same thing.
Yeah. Big call, I think, now for more bid support as well then from the market, and big opportunity for lots of for Jez. Look, I want to hear your heaven and hell, Dana. So we'll put up the jingly slide thing. I don't know what we're going to have on video. This is our first podcast we recorded on video, but something will happen. Jeremy will do something in the background.
Got to do the editing quickly after this, yeah. So that's something.
Something will happen, and let's go on to heaven and hell. So Dana, you've faced heaven and hell before. Same premise as before. So we ask each of our guests normally their bid heaven and their bid hell. As you're from the other side of the fence, our friends in procurement and category management, we'd love to know, as a procurement professional, what do suppliers do that you love and what do they do that drives you crazy?
This is a good one. Oh gosh, what should I start with? Which drives me crazy? Or I think I have more things that drive me crazy than that I truly love. But I don't know. I think what I truly love about some of the suppliers are people who you do end up becoming friends with and partners with, right? The people who are genuine and who are out there and who are trying to, align their goals and do the right thing and are just honest. I think the thing that drives me the most nuts is when you get these suppliers who it's business, which I get, but at the same time, they're so untrustworthy and you can catch them in whether it's lies or stretching the truth, just trying to get around you as procurement. So everybody loves to get around us, right? And don't want to have to deal with us or negotiate with us. So the people who are always constantly maybe going to the C-suite or trying to find somebody else within the organization so they can circumvent not only us, but also our process. Those are the people who drive me the most bonkers. And the people who kind of just follow the procedure and go along with it, I think obviously those are the people I love. They make my life simpler. It's the other ones who it's like, herding cats, where they're like talking to the CEO and now they're talking to somebody in the business and now they're talking to somebody over else in procurement and what they're doing. And it's like, you've got one point person, stick with it. Don't try to, work your angles. For the majority of time, I've seen it just does not work out. And, you guys are going to get some nasty grams from me aside too. So slapping your hand.
The last time we had you on, the episode was titled "Stop Being a Wanger."
Yes.
Which we introduced this great West Country phrase, which kind of means someone who kind of tries to chance it and bend the rules. So all you bid people avoiding procurement, stop. The message is still the same: stop being wangers.
Because if you can come to me and ask me for my insight, I'm going to do everything I can to help you to be successful. I mean, at least that's how I personally work. So the people who have done the best in proposals say, can you give me feedback? I know I can't have this larger team and it's not the right thing, but do you have any insight on what you think the team means? And yeah, I've talked to them 5 times. So yeah, of course I can give you my insight without, in a sense, breaking the rules. Like if you want my help and support, that's part of my job too. So the true people who are super smart know that we're here to help them too. And we're not just here to beat you to a brow for pricing. It's not about that, right? It's about value and, creating a partnership and value creation in that partnership. So I think the people who truly get it benefit, and the others who, just trying to do some crazy tactics, typically it doesn't end up well. At least it doesn't with me.
Good. And what's the bits? Did you cover the bits you love in that? Sorry, was there anything?
Yeah,
else?
so I love the people who are proactive and who will reach out to me and who take my feedback to heart and will take the time and aren't really trying to go around the process. They're trying to do the right thing, and just really, give us the best solution and are trying to create a true partnership, right? There's a lot of people out there. It's like, this is just business. It is what it is. But if you can take a step beyond that, and, it's a premise, a category management. If we can help you innovate, you can help us innovate. And then you truly have not just like a supply base, you're an extension of our team at that point, right? And I think people who can view it as that, those are the people I love, who really do view themselves as an extension of our team and really want to help us see us succeed.
Yeah, I mean, I think category managers, or that approach, is actually not mainstream, is it? Would that be your view, right? So
yes.
Certainly UK-centric procurements, whether it's stuff in the UK public sector, the regulated industry, or private sector, I don't think procurement people are often as well empowered as you are to have that kind of conversation. And in certainly the capture stuff that I do, I describe that horrible situation where you're invited to a bidders conference, and the client has their procurement person, a couple of senior people who spend quite a lot of the time talking about themselves, 5 minutes talking about, 5 minutes talking about a specification that's not particularly well thought through or is a bit old school, and we all sit there as bidders thinking we could have done such a better job if we'd just engaged with you a year ago or been given that opportunity. So there's an onus on us as a market to almost force the situation by engaging with procurement far before they get anywhere near a tender with that proactivity, white papers, engagement, whatever it might look like. But I think clients need to start asking the market for, telling the market we've got this problem, rather than we think this is the answer, price
Right.
that. We should have hackathons. We should, get us in, let's have the conversation, and then we'll go away and help you write a spec together and you make the decisions about that, and then procure it if you want. But quite often that comes back to value, as you said, and value creation. We're inhibited from adding the value that we can. So I think that's probably a decent takeaway for everyone, both sides of the fence. Let's get upstream and get focused on value.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you're right. There are a lot of procurement people who don't view it as I do, and I think that's unfortunate, right? And maybe they are of the mindset of, if the business is out for us, then we're going to be out for them in return. But I think they miss the bigger picture, and they're going to miss a lot of the value that they can actually provide and what they should be doing versus, just the bottom line. There's more than the bottom line, right? Whether it's quality, value, innovation, there's a lot more to consider.
So Dana, what item under $50 that you love to give as a gift?
Tequila.
Straight in.
My favorite.
Any particular brand?
No, I don't think I have a favorite. There are some really good, like Don Julio's good and things of that sort, but because I enjoy it, I typically booze is my gift of choice. So tequila.
Have
you
seen
The Rock has got his own tequila now?
Oh, I didn't.
Well, they're all doing it, aren't they? Yeah,
Various people have
got their own gins and things as well, haven't they?
Yeah, apparently he's a big fan of tequila. I follow him on like social media and stuff, and that's his kind of like treat as a glass of tequila. So he's got his own tequila now. So there you go.
Yeah.
And let's just go with have you got a favourite podcast other than ours, obviously?
Yeah, I was gonna say, what kind of jerk would I be if I wouldn't mention you guys? Is there another choice that I get to make for this? The only other, I'm not a huge podcast listener, except for at night when my kids are actually sleeping and I can actually listen. But some of the true crime stuff is interesting. There's one called Mortified, which they used to do live events, and so it got me to listen to their podcast of people like reading their old diaries from when they were like kids, and like funny stories they have, and just like the funny things kids would say. It cracks you up. If you have a diary and you go back from when you were in 5th grade and you read the stuff, you're like, I was a complete idiot and I sound ridiculous. And that's what these people are doing. It's called Mortified because literally they have to get up and tell their story in front of everybody. And for me, it's a bit of comic relief.
We're going with Mortified then. Very good podcast. So go on, Dana, how about your favorite quote?
Oh my gosh, favorite quote. I don't know if I have a favorite quote.
You have to listen back now and see if you had one last time.
I'm sure I did. I probably prepared a little bit better. I think the favorite quote wasn't supposed to be mine this time. So my favorite quote is be prepared because I really wasn't prepared for it.
Yeah, we've caught Dana surprise because we did have 2 guests on, and one guest is finishing her master's coursework and so couldn't join us. So we have in series 2, because we're now in series 2 of the Red Review podcast. Series 2 now having video. We changed some of the quickfire questions. So I'll tell you what, Dana, we'll hold on to the last one for the next time you come on. Maybe it's going to be the thing. When we launch a new series every time now, it's going to have to be you on the first episode.
Love it. I love it. I'm so game for it. You guys are so much fun.
Look, we are at our time limit, Dana. We have to keep this to time to help the APMP with their timings of their 32 hours of constant content in your face, from handstands through to how to write executive summaries and everything in between. So, Dana, it's been fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's just remind ourselves, your blog is Miss Category Management?
Yes, Miss Category Management. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, Dana Small. You can't misspell it. So.
Yeah. And Miss Category Management's on LinkedIn as well, right? So people can follow that. Get the posts, get some great insights from procurement, and actually I find it quite useful because you post quite a lot about the world of kind of advertising and marketing, which has a lot of similarities with bidding in terms of persuasive writing or being persuasive and capturing your audience and those kinds of things. So some really interesting insights. Thank you very much for joining us.
All right, thank you guys for having me.
And Jez, we've reached the end of another episode. We won't do the normal ending of where we then talk rubbish for 5 minutes. So it's been a pleasure. Anyone looking to find the Red Review, find us on any podcasting tool you use. Find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Apparently, even Facebook, we ever posted a page. I didn't even know we had a page on Facebook that our marketing team post onto. And Jez, do you want to just quickly mention your business before we go?
Yeah, so I own the Bid Toolkit. That's an online bid processing guide with training and tools to download baked into it, which was APMP Vendor of the Year.
Yeah.
Clang.
Clang, clang, clang.
Dana, we've had this thing on the podcast. So for a while, I was one of the people that volunteered in my business to go work on a project called NHS Nightingale, which were the COVID-19 hospitals that the UK built, and we built one in the Excel conference centre. So we converted a conference centre that's the same size as, I think it's 14 Boeing 747s end to end into a 4,000 bed COVID-19 field hospital. Thankfully, it wasn't all needed. But for a while, that was the clang, because I was like, like Florence bloody Nightingale. But now the clang of the podcast is Jeremy's business, which is APMP Vendor of the Year. So there you go. Well done, Jez.
Yeah.
Against all the odds.
Thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today. If you have watched this live in the Winning Business Virtual Experience, you would have seen us chatting away on the Q&A, and do follow up with us any further questions or connect with Dana. And thank you very much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you very much.